A CEO's world shatters when his housekeeper reveals his wife plans to take his 6-year-old twins to a dump. Racing there, he discovers betrayal beyond imagination. What dark secrets will this day uncover? Like, comment, and subscribe to find out how justice prevails. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and type love in the comments. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Great news awaits you. The November rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the downtown Boston office as Harrison Blackwell stood motionless, his phone pressed so hard against his ear that his knuckles had turned white. The voice on the other end belonged to Martha, the housekeeper who had been with his family for 12 years, and every word she spoke felt like a knife twisting deeper into his chest. "Mr. Blackwell, I wouldn't call if I wasn't certain." Martha's voice trembled with urgency. "I overheard Vanessa on the phone this morning. She said she was taking the girls somewhere they'd never forget. She laughed, sir. She laughed and said they needed to learn their place." Harrison's jaw clenched. Vanessa, his wife of 2 years, the woman who had swept into his life with her golden hair, bright smile, and promises of devotion. The woman who claimed to love his daughters as her own. At 45, Harrison had thought he'd found a second chance at happiness after his first wife passed away from cancer 4 years ago. How spectacularly wrong he'd been. "Where is she taking them?" he demanded, his voice barely controlled. "The old Jefferson dump, sir, off Route 9. I heard her give directions to someone on the phone. She's leaving in 20 minutes. Harrison's mind raced. The Jefferson dump was a sprawling wasteland on the outskirts of the city, a place where garbage trucks deposited tons of refuse daily. The very thought of his precious daughters anywhere near that place made his blood run cold. Amelia and Charlotte, his 6-year-old angels with their mother's gentle eyes and infectious giggles, the center of his universe. "Martha, call my lawyer. Tell him to meet me at my house in 2 hours. And Martha," his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, "thank you. You may have just saved my daughters from something unforgivable." He ended the call and grabbed his coat, his movements sharp and purposeful. His assistant burst into the office just as he was heading for the door. "Mr. Blackwell, the meeting with the Japanese investors—" "Cancel it. Cancel everything." Harrison's tone left no room for argument. "I have a family emergency." The drive from downtown Boston to Route 9 usually took 40 minutes, but Harrison made it in 25, his Mercedes weaving through traffic with practiced precision. His mind churned with disbelief. Part of him, a desperate, naive part, hoped Martha had misunderstood, that there was some logical explanation, that Vanessa, despite her recent coldness and mysterious phone calls, wasn't capable of such cruelty. But another part of him, the part that had built a multi-billion-dollar empire through reading people and trusting his instincts, knew better. The signs had been there. Vanessa's increasing impatience with the girls, the way she'd snap at them over minor infractions, how she'd started taking calls in private, her voice hushed and secretive. The rain intensified as Harrison turned onto the service road leading to the dump. The landscape transformed from urban sprawl to industrial desolation. Rusted chain-link fences lined the route, beyond which mountains of garbage rose like ugly monuments to waste and excess. The smell hit him even through the car's air filtration system, acrid, overwhelming, nauseating. And then he saw it. Vanessa's white BMW parked at an angle near the dump's entrance, looking absurdly pristine against the backdrop of filth. Harrison's heart stopped. This was real. This was actually happening. He pulled over 100 yards away, partially hidden behind an abandoned bulldozer, and killed the engine. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he watched as Vanessa emerged from the driver's side, her red dress a shocking splash of color in the gray landscape. She was on her phone, laughing, actually laughing, her voice carrying on the wind. The back doors of the BMW opened and 2 small figures stepped out into the rain. Amelia and Charlotte, dressed in their pink matching outfits that Vanessa had insisted they wear this morning. Harrison's daughters looked around in confusion, their small faces scrunched up against the rain and the overwhelming stench. Harrison's hand moved to the door handle, but he forced himself to wait. He needed to see this. He needed to witness exactly what Vanessa was capable of, no matter how much it destroyed him. Because if he was going to protect his daughters, if he was going to ensure this never happened again, he needed irrefutable proof of who Vanessa really was. Vanessa gestured toward a mountain of garbage bags, still holding her phone to her ear. Even from this distance, Harrison could read his daughter's body language. The way Charlotte grabbed her sister's hand, how Amelia stepped closer to her twin. They were scared. His brave, beautiful girls were frightened, and the woman who was supposed to protect them was the source of that fear. "Come on, princesses." Vanessa's voice drifted across the wasteland, dripping with sarcasm. "Time to see where little girls who don't appreciate what they have really belong." Charlotte started to cry, her small shoulders shaking. Amelia, always the protector despite being born only 3 minutes earlier, wrapped her arm around her sister. Harrison's vision blurred with rage. His entire body trembled with the effort of staying in the car, of not rushing out there immediately. But then Vanessa said something that changed everything. "Yes, I'm here with them now." She spoke into the phone, her back turned to the girls. "Don't worry, baby. Once the old fool signs the trust revision next week, we're set. The girls will be in boarding school by Christmas, and you and I can finally be together, with half his fortune." Harrison's world tilted. This wasn't just cruelty. This was calculated, premeditated. Vanessa had been planning this, planning to steal from him, to send his daughters away, to replace their family with whatever lover she'd been hiding. The trust revision. She'd been pushing him for weeks to update the family trust, claiming it was for tax purposes. She'd even arranged for her own lawyer to draw up the papers. He'd been such a fool. Charlotte's crying intensified and Vanessa whirled around. "Oh, shut up!" she snapped, her beautiful face twisted into something ugly. "You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. See those trash bags? Start going through them. Find me something valuable. Maybe then you'll understand what real work looks like." That was it. Harrison wouldn't wait another second. He threw open his car door and strode toward the scene. Rain soaking through his expensive suit, his shoes squelching in the mud. He didn't care. Nothing mattered except reaching his daughters. Vanessa didn't see him coming. She was too busy instructing someone on the phone to give her another hour. The girls, however, spotted him immediately. Charlotte's tear-stained face lit up with desperate hope. "Daddy!" she screamed, breaking free from Amelia and running toward him despite the slippery ground. Vanessa spun around, the phone slipping from her hand and falling into a puddle. For a moment, just a fleeting second, Harrison saw genuine fear cross her features. Then it was gone, replaced by a mask of false surprise. "Harrison, what are you—" "I can explain." "You can explain?" Harrison's voice was arctic as he scooped Charlotte into his arms and held out his other hand to Amelia, who rushed to his side. "You can explain why my 6-year-old daughters are standing in a dump while you plan my financial ruin with your lover?" Vanessa's face went pale, then flushed deep red. You were listening? You followed me? I followed you because someone who actually cares about my children warned me." Harrison held his daughters close, feeling their small bodies shake against him. "And I heard everything, Vanessa. Every single word." The rain fell harder, as if the sky itself was weeping for the betrayal that had unfolded in this desolate place. Harrison turned his back on his wife, on the woman he'd trusted with his heart and his children, and began walking toward his car. "Wait!" Vanessa called out, desperation cracking her voice. "Harrison, please! It's not what you think." But Harrison didn't stop. He didn't look back. Because he knew exactly what it was, and he knew exactly what he had to do next. As he buckled his daughters into his Mercedes, their small faces looking up at him with questions they were too young to fully understand, Harrison made a silent promise. Justice would come. Not just for him, but for Amelia and Charlotte. And Vanessa would learn that there were consequences for playing games with a man who had everything to lose and nothing left to protect, except the 2 precious souls sitting in his backseat. The war had just begun, and Harrison Blackwell never lost a war that mattered. The drive back to the Blackwell mansion in Beacon Hill was silent, except for the soft sniffles coming from the back seat. Harrison kept his eyes on the road, his jaw set in a hard line, but his right hand reached back between the seats. Almost immediately, 2 small hands grabbed onto it, Amelia's and Charlotte's, their fingers intertwining with his in a grip that broke his heart. "Daddy?" Amelia's voice was tiny, uncertain. "Are we in trouble?" Harrison's throat constricted. He pulled the car over onto the shoulder, put it in park, and turned to face his daughters. Rain continued to hammer the roof, creating a cocoon of sound that somehow made the moment more intimate. "Look at me, both of you," he said gently. And two pairs of hazel eyes, so much like their late mother's, met his. "You are not in trouble. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing that happened today was your fault." Charlotte's lower lip trembled. "But Vanessa said we were bad. She said we don't appreciate things and that we needed to learn where we belong." "Your stepmother was wrong," Harrison stated firmly, each word deliberate. "You belong with me, in our home, safe and loved, always." "Is she coming home with us?" Amelia asked, fear evident in her voice. Harrison considered his answer carefully. These were 6-year-old children, already traumatized by losing their mother to cancer, then by the emotional abuse they'd clearly been suffering under Vanessa's care. He wouldn't lie to them, but he also wouldn't burden them with adult complexities they couldn't process. "No, sweetheart. Vanessa won't be living with us anymore. It's going to be just the three of us, like before. Is that okay?" The relief on their faces was instantaneous and devastating. How long had they been suffering? How many signs had he missed while buried in work, trusting that his new wife was caring for them as she'd promised? "I'm so sorry," Harrison whispered, pulling both girls forward into an awkward embrace over the center console. "I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening." "It's okay, Daddy," Charlotte murmured against his shoulder. "You're here now." They stayed like that for several minutes, just holding each other before Harrison finally pulled back. "Let's go home. Martha's making hot chocolate." The mention of Martha brought genuine smiles to their faces, and Harrison felt a surge of gratitude for the woman who had loved his daughters enough to risk her job, and possibly Vanessa's wrath, to protect them. By the time they pulled into the circular driveway of the Blackwell mansion, 3 cars were already parked there. Martha's modest sedan, a sleek black town car belonging to his lawyer, Thomas Crawford, and a silver Audi he didn't recognize. Harrison frowned. He'd expected Thomas, but who was the third visitor? Martha appeared at the front door before Harrison had even turned off the engine, her plump face creased with worry. She rushed down the steps despite the rain, carrying 2 large umbrellas. "Oh, my angels!" she cried, gathering both girls into a fierce hug as soon as they emerged from the car. Come inside, come inside. I have hot chocolate and cookies waiting." As Martha shepherded the girls into the house, Harrison was intercepted by Thomas Crawford. At 62, Thomas was one of Boston's most formidable family lawyers, with silver hair and the sharp eyes of a man who'd seen every variety of human deception. "Harrison," Thomas clasped his shoulder. "Martha gave me the basics. How are the girls?" "Shaken, scared, but they'll be okay." Harrison's voice hardened. "I need Vanessa out of my life, Thomas. Completely. By any legal means necessary. That's why I brought someone." Thomas gestured toward the front door, where a woman in her late 30s stood waiting, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit despite the weekend. "This is Detective Sarah Chen. She's with the Family Protection Unit." Harrison's eyebrows rose. "You called the police?" "What Vanessa did constitutes child endangerment," Thomas explained quietly. "Those girls are 6 years old, Harrison. She took them to an active dump site and attempted to force them to dig through garbage. That's criminal." Detective Chen stepped forward, extending her hand. "Mr. Blackwell, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask your daughter some questions. With you present, of course. The sooner we document what happened, the stronger the case." Harrison ran a hand through his wet hair, suddenly exhausted. "She hasn't hurt them physically. Just today, just this psychological torture." "That you know of," Detective Chen said gently. "Mr. Blackwell, in my experience, what we see is often just the tip of the iceberg. Children hide abuse to protect the adults they love, even abusive ones, because they're scared of what might happen if they tell." The words hit Harrison like a punch to the gut. How much hadn't he seen? How many times had Vanessa been cruel when he wasn't there to witness it? They moved into the mansion, where Martha had settled the girls in the sunroom with their hot chocolate. The room was all windows overlooking the private garden, filled with comfortable furniture and the girls' favorite books and toys. It was their safe space, and Harrison was grateful Martha had thought to bring them here, rather than the formal living room. Detective Chen proved to be remarkably good with children. She sat on the floor with Amelia and Charlotte, admiring their drawings and sipping her own hot chocolate before gently steering the conversation to that morning. "So your daddy told me you had quite an adventure today," she began casually. "Want to tell me about it?" Charlotte looked at Amelia, who nodded encouragingly. "Vanessa was mean," Charlotte said quietly. "She's always mean when Daddy's not home." "Always?" Harrison interjected, unable to help himself. Thomas laid a warning hand on his arm. "Yeah," Amelia confirmed, her voice stronger than her sister's. "She yells at us a lot. She says we're spoiled and we don't deserve Daddy's money. She says our real mommy would be ashamed of us." Harrison felt like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. Jennifer. Vanessa had dared to invoke Jennifer's name to hurt their daughters. Detective Chen made notes without showing any reaction. "That must have made you feel very sad. Did she do anything else that made you sad or scared?" The girls exchanged glances again, and Harrison recognized that look. They were deciding how much to reveal. Charlotte bit her lip, then whispered, "Sometimes she locked us in our room when we were bad. No dinner." "You were never bad," Martha spoke up from the doorway, her voice thick with emotion. "Never. You're good girls. The best girls." "How often did she lock you in your room?" Detective Chen asked gently. "Lots of times," Amelia said. "Maybe 10 times? 20? Harrison closed his eyes. 10 or 20 times his daughters had gone to bed hungry, locked away like criminals, while he'd been oblivious, working late, traveling for business, trusting his wife. The interview continued for another 30 minutes, with the girls revealing a pattern of emotional abuse that had started small, snide comments, exclusion from activities, and gradually escalated. Vanessa had been smart about it, ramping up the cruelty so slowly that the girls hadn't realized how abnormal it was. And she'd always been careful to be loving and attentive when Harrison was present. Finally, Detective Chen closed her notebook. "Girls, you've been very brave. I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again, okay?" She stood and moved to confer quietly with Thomas and Harrison in the hallway. "We have enough for charges," she said bluntly. "Child endangerment, emotional abuse, possibly neglect. And that's before we get into the fraud she was planning regarding your family trust." "What do you need from me?" Harrison asked. "First, a formal statement about what you witnessed today. Second, I need you to not contact Vanessa. Don't warn her, don't confront her. Let us handle this." Detective Chen paused. "She's still at the dump?" Harrison checked his watch. It had been nearly 2 hours. "I don't know. She might have gone home to our apartment downtown." He'd insisted Vanessa keep her own place when they married, claiming it was important she maintained independence. Now he realized it was instinct, some part of him that never fully trusted her. "We'll find her," Detective Chen assured him. "Mr. Crawford here will start the legal proceedings for divorce and the restraining order. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you have the locks changed here and consider security for the girls." "Already on it," Martha called from the sunroom. "I called Mr. Peterson from the security company. He's sending a team within the hour." Harrison managed a weak smile. Martha always was 3 steps ahead. As Detective Chen left and Thomas began laying out the legal strategy, divorce, restraining order, criminal charges, invalidation of any documents Vanessa had convinced him to sign, Harrison felt the weight of the day finally crash down on him. He was 45 years old, a man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. Yet he'd been completely blind to what was happening under his own roof. "Stop," Thomas said, reading his expression. "This isn't your fault. People like Vanessa are predators. They're skilled at deception. You're not the first intelligent man to be fooled, and you won't be the last. But your daughters are safe now, because you acted the moment you knew. That's what matters." Through the doorway, Harrison could see Amelia and Charlotte, already looking more relaxed as Martha read to them from their favorite book. They were resilient, these girls of his. They'd survived losing their mother, and they'd survive this too. He'd make sure of it. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Harrison, please. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Please don't do this. I love you. I love the girls." B. Harrison showed the message to Thomas, who immediately took the phone. "Don't respond. In fact, give me this. We'll turn it over to Detective Chen. Any contact from her is now evidence." "What do I tell the girls?" Harrison asked quietly. "When they ask why Vanessa did this? How do I explain that someone they trusted, someone I brought into their lives, could be so cruel?" Thomas was quiet for a moment. "You tell them the truth, in an age-appropriate way. You tell them that sometimes people aren't who they pretend to be, and you teach them to trust their instincts. Those girls knew something was wrong. They just didn't have the power to do anything about it. Next time they'll know they can come to you. Next time." Harrison's stomach turned. He'd make damn sure there wasn't a next time. As evening fell and Martha coaxed the girls into taking a warm bath before bed, Harrison stood in his study looking at the family photo on his desk. It had been taken just 6 months ago, him, Vanessa, Amelia, and Charlotte at their summer house in Cape Cod. Everyone was smiling. But now, looking closer, Harrison could see the tension in his daughter's eyes, the way they leaned away from Vanessa instead of toward her. The signs had been there. He just hadn't wanted to see them. His phone, Thomas had returned it after photographing Vanessa's message, buzzed again. Another text from Vanessa, this one more desperate. "I know you're angry, but please, let me see you. Let me see the girls. We're a family, Harrison. Don't throw that away because of one mistake." One mistake. As if traumatizing his children was equivalent to forgetting to pick up milk. Harrison deleted the message without responding. Let her panic. Let her wonder what was coming. Because tomorrow morning Thomas would file papers that would systematically dismantle every plan Vanessa had made. And Harrison would make sure that everyone in their social circle knew exactly what kind of person she was. Upstairs he could hear Martha helping the girls into their pajamas, their voices high and sweet as they chattered about nothing in particular. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Harrison climbed the stairs to their bedroom, where both girls were snuggled under their matching flowered quilts, Jennifer's last gift to them before she died. "Daddy," Charlotte said sleepily, "can you stay until we fall asleep?" "Of course, Princess." He settled into the chair between their beds, the same chair where Jennifer used to sit, and took a small hand from each girl. "Daddy?" Amelia's voice was drowsy. "Are you going to find us a new mommy?" Harrison's breath caught. "Would you want that? Someday, I mean?" "Maybe," Amelia considered. "But not soon. Can it just be us for a while?" "It can be just us for as long as you want," Harrison promised. And he meant it. Whatever happened in the future, he would never again prioritize his own loneliness over his daughter's well-being. They'd survived losing their mother and the cruelty of a stepmother. They deserved peace. Within minutes, both girls were asleep, their faces finally relaxed and peaceful. Harrison sat there in the darkened room, listening to their breathing, and made a silent vow. He would spend the rest of his life making sure they never felt unsafe again. And Vanessa? She would face every consequence her actions had earned. Not just in family court or criminal court, but in the court of public opinion. Harrison Blackwell hadn't built an empire by being merciful to those who threatened what he loved. The battle lines were drawn. And this was one war Vanessa had no hope of winning. The Monday morning sun streamed through the windows of Harrison's downtown office, but he barely noticed. He'd been awake since 4 a.m., preparing for what Thomas called the opening salvo. On his desk lay a stack of legal documents that would, once filed, begin the systematic destruction of Vanessa's plans and reputation. Thomas sat across from him, reviewing the paperwork one final time. Emergency restraining order. Granted as of 7 a.m. this morning. Divorce petition citing fraud, emotional abuse, and infidelity. Criminal charges filed by the DA's office for child endangerment. Forensic audit of all joint accounts and the trust documents she had you review last month. He looked up. She's about to have a very bad day. Good, Harrison said coldly. He hadn't slept well, kept awake by images of his daughter standing in that dump, by the memory of Charlotte's tears, by the rage that someone he'd trusted had so thoroughly betrayed him. His phone rang. Martha. Harrison answered immediately. Is everything okay? The girls are fine, Mr. Blackwell. They're having breakfast. But you should know, Vanessa just showed up at the front gate. Security stopped her, but she's causing quite a scene, screaming about her rights as their mother. Harrison's jaw clenched. She has no rights. Tell security if she doesn't leave in 5 minutes. They're to call the police. The restraining order is active as of an hour ago. Already done, sir. The police are on their way. I just wanted you to know. After hanging up, Harrison looked at Thomas. She doesn't understand yet, does she? That this is actually happening. People like Vanessa never think they'll face real consequences, Thomas replied. She assumed you'd be angry, maybe file for divorce, but ultimately give her a settlement to make her go away quietly. She has no idea what she's actually dealing with. Harrison's phone buzzed with a text from his head of security. Police have arrived, subject being escorted from premises. She's threatening legal action. Let her threaten, Harrison muttered. We have enough evidence to bury her. What Harrison didn't share with Thomas was the other discovery he'd made in the early hours of the morning. Unable to sleep, he'd gone through Vanessa's credit card statements, the card on his account that she'd promised to use only for household expenses. What he'd found had added another layer to her betrayal. Thousands of dollars spent at luxury hotels in Boston. Jewelry purchases he'd never seen her wear. Restaurants she'd claimed to visit with girlfriends, but the charges showed parties of 2. And most damningly, payments to a private investigator. She'd been investigating him, presumably looking for dirt she could use in a divorce. Unfortunately for her, Harrison's life was boringly clean. His only obsession outside work was his daughters. But the investigator had given Harrison an idea. He'd hired his own. A woman named Patricia Norton who specialized in infidelity cases. Patricia had taken the case immediately upon learning what Vanessa had done to the girls. She'd promised results within 48 hours. The criminal case worries me, Thomas admitted. Not because we won't win, but because it'll be public. The media will have a field day. Billionaire CEO's wife accused of child abuse. And your daughters' names will be everywhere. Their names will be sealed because they're minors, Harrison countered. But yes, this will be public. And honestly, I want it to be. I want everyone to know what she is. Thomas studied him. This is about more than justice for your girls. You want to destroy her. She tried to destroy my family, Harrison said flatly. She planned to have my daughters institutionalized in some boarding school so she could steal half my wealth and run off with her lover. Yes, Thomas, I want to destroy her. Completely. The intercom buzzed. Harrison's assistant, Carol, sounded nervous. Mr. Blackwell, there's a Detective Chen here to see you. She says it's urgent. Send her in. Detective Chen entered, looking grim. Mr. Blackwell, Mr. Crawford, we have a problem. Vanessa's lover, we identified him. He's a man named Kyle Rodriguez, 32, from Miami, and he has a record. Harrison went still. What kind of record? Fraud. Identity theft. He served 18 months in federal prison 3 years ago for running a romance scam targeting wealthy widows and divorcees. Detective Chen pulled out her tablet, showing them a mugshot of a handsome man with dark hair and a charming smile. He uses dating apps to find lonely wealthy people, gains their trust, and systematically drains their accounts. The room spun. Harrison gripped the edge of his desk. You're telling me my wife was part of a con? Or a mark who became a willing accomplice, Detective Chen suggested. We're still investigating. But Rodriguez has been in Boston for 6 months, right around the time you mentioned Vanessa started acting differently. Thomas swore under his breath. If Vanessa can prove she was manipulated by Rodriguez, she might use it to reduce her culpability. Not for what she did to those children, Detective Chen said firmly. No one forced her to take them to that dump. No one forced her to lock them in their room without dinner. Rodriguez might have motivated the financial fraud, but the abuse? That's all her. Harrison's mind raced. 6 months ago, Vanessa had started taking more trips into the city alone, claiming she was taking art classes. She'd become more secretive with her phone, more critical of the girls. All of it lined up with when Rodriguez arrived in Boston. "I want to know everything," Harrison demanded. "Every email, every text, every hotel room they shared. I want a complete timeline of their relationship." "We're working on it," Detective Chen assured him. "Rodriguez has already been brought in for questioning. He lawyered up immediately, but we have enough for a warrant to search his apartment. If there's evidence of the con, we'll find it." After Detective Chen left, Harrison sat in silence, processing this new information. He'd thought Vanessa's betrayal couldn't get deeper. He'd been wrong. "Harrison," Thomas said carefully, "this actually works in our favor. If Vanessa was being manipulated by a convicted con artist, it makes her look even worse. What kind of stepmother puts her boyfriend's financial schemes above the well-being of her husband's children? She's not their stepmother anymore," Harrison said quietly. "As far as I'm concerned, she's a stranger who temporarily lived in my house." His phone rang again. Patricia Norton, the private investigator. "Mr. Blackwell, you're going to want to hear this." Patricia's voice crackled with excitement. "I've been going through Vanessa's background like you asked. Her name isn't really Vanessa Blackwell. It's not even Vanessa Thornton, the maiden name she gave you." Harrison's blood ran cold. "What?" "Her real name is Vanessa Kowalski. She's from a small town in Pennsylvania. Grew up in a trailer park with an alcoholic mother. Everything she told you about her background, the wealthy family, the private schools, the trust fund, all lies. I have her high school records. She barely graduated." Harrison felt like the ground was disappearing beneath him. "How is that possible? I saw documents, references. Forged, most likely. Or Rodriguez helped her create a false identity. I'm still tracking down the details, but Mr. Blackwell, the woman you married, is a complete fabrication." After hanging up, Harrison stood and walked to the window, staring out at the Boston skyline. 2 years. He'd been married to a woman who didn't exist, who'd lied about everything, who'd hurt his children and plotted to steal from him. How had he been so blind? "Jennifer would never have let this happen," he whispered. His first wife had been an excellent judge of character. She would have seen through Vanessa immediately. "You can't think like that," Thomas said gently. "Jennifer isn't here. You had to make these decisions alone, as a grieving widower trying to build a new life for your girls. Vanessa exploited that grief. It's not your fault." But it felt like his fault. Every time Charlotte cried, every time Amelia flinched, it felt like his failure. His phone buzzed with a text from Martha. "Girls are asking when they can go back to school. They miss their friends." Harrison had kept them home Monday and Tuesday, wanting them close while the legal machinery ground forward. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe they needed normalcy. He called Martha. "Let's send them back tomorrow, but I want security with them, someone watching at all times." "Already arranged," Martha replied. "And I've spoken with their teacher, Mrs. Peterson. She knows there's a situation at home and will keep an extra eye on them." "Thank you, Martha, for everything. Those girls are like my own grandchildren, Mr. Blackwell. I'd do anything for them. And for you." After ending the call, Harrison turned to Thomas. "What's next?" "We wait for the criminal investigation to unfold. We proceed with the divorce. And we prepare for Vanessa to fight back because she will." Thomas gathered his papers. Women like her don't go down without a struggle. But Thomas was wrong. Vanessa didn't struggle. She disappeared. By Wednesday morning, when she failed to appear for her scheduled arraignment on the child endangerment charges, the police went to her downtown apartment. They found it empty, cleaned out, as if no one had ever lived there. Vanessa had run. Detective Chen stood in Harrison's office that afternoon, looking frustrated. "We've issued a warrant for her arrest. We're monitoring her credit cards, her bank accounts, her phone. But she's gone to ground." "What about Rodriguez?" Harrison demanded. "Also disappeared. His apartment was already empty when we got the search warrant. These two planned this. They knew exactly what they'd do if things went wrong." Harrison's fists clenched. "So they just get away with it? After what they did?" "No one gets away forever, Mr. Blackwell. We'll find them. It's just a matter of time." Detective Chen's expression softened. In the meantime, your daughters are safe. That's what matters. But Harrison didn't feel like his daughters were safe. Not while Vanessa was out there, possibly planning retaliation. He doubled security at the house, hired bodyguards for the girls' school, and found himself jumping at every unexpected sound. The girls noticed, of course. Children always did. "Daddy, you seem scared," Amelia observed Thursday evening at dinner. "Are you scared of Vanessa?" Harrison exchanged glances with Martha, who was serving their meal. How did he answer that honestly without frightening them? "I'm not scared," he said carefully. "But I am being very careful. Vanessa did some bad things, and now she's hiding. The police are looking for her, and until they find her, I just want to make sure you're extra safe." "We have the bodyguards now," Charlotte said matter-of-factly. "Mr. Stevens is nice. He let me tell him about my butterfly collection." Harrison smiled despite his anxiety. Leave it to his daughters to befriend their security detail. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Harrison stood in the hallway outside their room, listening to their soft breathing through the baby monitor he'd had Martha reinstall. They seemed resilient, even happy, but he wondered what scars Vanessa had left that wouldn't show for years. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but this isn't over. You took everything from me. I'll take everything from you. Watch your back, Harrison. Watch those girls. Because I'm not finished with them yet." V. Harrison's blood turned to ice. Harrison stared at the threatening text message until his vision blurred, his thumb hovering over the call button for Detective Chen. But before he could dial, another message appeared, this time with an attachment. His heart seized as he opened it. It was a photograph of his daughter's school, taken from across the street. The timestamp showed it had been captured that very afternoon, just as the girls were being escorted to Harrison's car by Mr. Stevens, their bodyguard. Someone had been watching them. Someone had been close enough to document their movements. Harrison's hands shook as he forwarded everything to Detective Chen, then called her directly, not caring that it was nearly midnight. "She was at their school," he said without preamble when Chen answered. "Vanessa was watching my daughters today. I'm looking at the photos now." Chen's voice was tight with concern. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm sending officers to your house immediately, and I'm requesting protective custody protocols for the girls." "What does that mean?" "It means we treat this as a credible threat. Increased police presence, possibly relocating you and the girls temporarily until we locate her." Harrison's mind raced. Relocate? Uproot his daughters again? Make them hide like criminals when they'd done nothing wrong? But the alternative, risking their safety, was unthinkable. "Do it," he said. "Whatever it takes to keep them safe." Within an hour, his mansion looked like a crime scene. Police cars lined the street, their lights painting the neighborhood in alternating blue and red. Detectives swept the property for surveillance devices while officers interviewed the overnight security team. The girls, awakened by the commotion, sat in the living room with Martha, clutching their stuffed animals and trying to understand why their home had become a police station. Detective Chen sat across from Harrison in his study, her expression grave. "The phone number those texts came from is a burner, untraceable. But the photo's metadata tells us something interesting. It was taken with an iPhone 12, and the location services weren't disabled. We know exactly where the photographer was standing. Can you use that to find her? We're pulling security footage from every business and traffic camera in that area. If Vanessa was there, we'll get her face." Chen paused. "But Mr. Blackwell, I need you to consider something. What if it wasn't Vanessa who took the photo?" Harrison frowned. "Rodriguez? Or someone they hired? These texts could be coming from anywhere. Vanessa and Rodriguez might not even be in Boston anymore. They could be orchestrating this remotely, using someone local to surveil your family." The thought made Harrison's stomach turn. It meant the threat was even more complex, more difficult to neutralize. How did you protect against an enemy you couldn't identify? "There's something else," Chen continued. "We got into Rodriguez's phone records. He's been in contact with someone at your company. Someone's been feeding him information about your schedule, your movements, possibly even your security protocols." Harrison shot to his feet. Who? We're still determining that. The calls were made to internal extensions routed through your company's main switchboard. It's going to take time to trace them back to a specific employee. I want a list of everyone Rodriguez called, every employee he might have compromised, and I want them investigated immediately. Already in process, Chen assured him. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that someone you trust is involved in this. After the police finally left, with a patrol car stationed permanently outside the gates and 2 plainclothes officers remaining inside the house, Harrison sat with his daughters. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and neither girl had slept. "Daddy, why does Vanessa hate us so much?" Charlotte asked, her voice small and broken in a way that shattered Harrison's heart. "Oh, baby." Harrison pulled her into his lap, gesturing for Amelia to climb up beside her sister. "This isn't about you. This has never been about you. Vanessa is a very sick, very troubled person who made terrible choices. None of this is your fault." "But she said we were bad," Amelia whispered. "She said we didn't deserve to be your daughters." Harrison felt rage boil in his chest, not at his children, but at the woman who had planted these poisonous thoughts in their minds. "Listen to me, both of you. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. You are smart, kind, brave, and beautiful. You are my whole world. And nothing anyone says or does will ever change that. Do you understand?" Both girls nodded, but Harrison could see the doubt lingering in their eyes. Vanessa's cruelty had planted seeds that would take time and patience to uproot. "I think we need to talk to someone," Harrison said gently. "A special kind of doctor who helps children process difficult feelings. Would that be okay?" "Like a feelings doctor?" Charlotte asked. "Exactly like that. Someone who can help you understand that what happened wasn't your fault, and give you tools to feel safe again." Martha appeared in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed from crying but her expression determined. "Mr. Blackwell, there's someone at the gate. She says her name is Dr. Rebecca Walsh, and that Detective Chen sent her." Harrison's eyebrows rose. He hadn't requested a therapist yet, but apparently Chen had anticipated the need. When Dr. Walsh entered, a warm-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an easy smile, Harrison felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "I specialize in childhood trauma," Dr. Walsh explained after the girls had been coaxed upstairs for much-needed sleep. "Detective Chen called me last night and briefed me on the situation. I know this is happening fast, but the sooner we can intervene, the better the long-term outcomes for your daughters." "What kind of damage are we looking at?" Harrison asked bluntly. "What has Vanessa done to them?" Dr. Walsh's expression was compassionate but honest. "From what Detective Chen described, your daughters have experienced sustained emotional abuse, neglect, and a recent traumatic event. They're likely dealing with anxiety, possible PTSD symptoms, trust issues, and distorted self-perception. The good news is they're young, they're resilient, and they have a parent who clearly loves them and is committed to their healing. What do I need to do? Be patient, be consistent, reassure them constantly that they're safe and loved, and bring them to see me twice a week for the next several months." Dr. Walsh pulled out a card. "This is my direct number. If you or the girls need me between sessions, call any time." Over the next few days, a strange new normal established itself. The girls returned to school with their bodyguards, though Harrison had arranged for them to attend a different building within the same private academy, one with more controlled access and better security. Dr. Walsh began her sessions, using play therapy and art to help the girls process their experiences. And Harrison found himself sleeping in a chair outside his daughter's bedroom, unable to rest unless he could hear them breathing. On Friday afternoon, Detective Chen arrived with news that sent Harrison's carefully maintained control spiraling. "We identified the mole in your company," she said, her expression grim. "It's your executive assistant, Diane Foster." Harrison's world tilted. Diane had worked for him for 7 years. She knew everything about his business, his schedule, his personal life. She'd been at his first wedding to Jennifer. She'd sent flowers when Jennifer died. She'd helped him arrange his wedding to Vanessa. "No," Harrison said automatically. "Not Diane. She's loyal. She's family." "I'm sorry," Chen said gently. But we have phone records, emails, and bank deposits. Rodriguez has been paying her $10,000 a month for information about you. It started 8 months ago, right after you started dating Vanessa. The betrayal felt physical, like a knife between his ribs. Why would she do this? Financial trouble. Her husband's business failed 2 years ago. They were facing foreclosure on their home, bankruptcy. Rodriguez offered her a way out. Chen paused. She's in interrogation now. She's cooperating fully, giving us everything she knows about Rodriguez and Vanessa's plans. I want to see her, Harrison said coldly. I want to hear her explain why she sold me out. An hour later, Harrison sat in an interrogation room at Boston Police Headquarters, separated from Diane Foster by a metal table and a gulf of betrayal that felt insurmountable. Diane looked terrible, her usually perfect appearance disheveled, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands shaking as they clutched a tissue. "Harrison," she whispered when she saw him. "God, Harrison, I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" Harrison's voice was ice. "You sold out my family, Diane. You helped them plan to hurt my children, and you're sorry?" "I didn't know about the children." Diane's voice cracked. "I swear I didn't know what Vanessa was doing to them. Kyle told me it was just about the money, about getting you to sign over some assets in the divorce. He said Vanessa was leaving you because you were emotionally distant, that she just wanted a fair settlement. And you believed a con artist over someone you'd worked with for 7 years? We were losing our house, Harrison. My husband was talking about suicide. Kyle offered me a way to save my family." Diane dissolved into sobs. "But I swear on my children's lives, I didn't know about the abuse. When I heard what Vanessa did at that dump, I wanted to die. I wanted to call you immediately and confess everything, but I was so scared." Detective Chen, standing in the corner, spoke up. "Ms. Foster has provided extensive information about Rodriguez's operation. He's run this scam at least 6 times before, always targeting wealthy widowers or divorcees with young children. Vanessa was his partner, his wife, actually. They're married, have been for 8 years. Harrison's head snapped up. "What?" "Vanessa's marriage to you was never legal," Chen explained. "She was already married to Rodriguez when she went through that ceremony with you, which means she's guilty of bigamy on top of everything else." The hits kept coming, each revelation more devastating than the last. Harrison slumped in his chair, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. His marriage had been a lie. His assistant had betrayed him. And somewhere out there, Vanessa and Rodriguez were planning their next move. "Where are they?" Harrison asked Diane. "Where did they go?" "I don't know," Diane whispered. "Kyle stopped contacting me 3 days ago, right after you filed charges against Vanessa. He must have known I'd be discovered eventually." Harrison stood abruptly. "I'm done here. Detective Chen, make sure she's charged with everything possible. Conspiracy, fraud, anything that sticks." "Harrison, please," Diane called as he headed for the door. "I know you hate me, but please, my children. They'll lose their mother if I go to prison. Please." Harrison turned back, his expression carved from stone. "You should have thought about your children before you helped someone hurt mine." He left without another word, Diane's sobs echoing behind him. That night, after the girls were finally asleep and Martha had retired to her quarters, Harrison sat alone in his study with a glass of scotch he had no intention of drinking. His phone showed 23 missed calls from business associates, reporters, and concerned friends. The story had broken that morning. Billionaire CEO's wife vanishes amid child abuse charges. And now everyone wanted a statement, an interview, a piece of his pain to consume. He ignored them all. The only call he returned was to Thomas Crawford. "We've frozen all of Vanessa's accounts," Thomas reported. "And we've filed civil suits to recover every penny she stole. The bigamy revelation actually helps us. It means every financial document she signed as your wife is fraudulent. We can unwind all of it." "What about the girls?" Harrison asked. "How do we protect them from the media circus?" "We don't," Thomas said bluntly. "This is a major story, Harrison. CEO, con artists, child abuse, it has everything the press loves. All we can do is control the narrative as much as possible. I suggest a press conference. You speak directly to the public. Express your gratitude to the police, your commitment to your daughter's well-being, and make it clear that you won't rest until Vanessa and Rodriguez face justice. A press conference means cameras, questions. My daughter's trauma becomes entertainment. Your daughter's names are sealed. Their faces won't be shown. But yes, there will be questions. However, if you don't control this narrative, someone else will. Better it comes from you. Harrison knew Thomas was right. But the thought of standing in front of cameras and discussing the worst experience of his life made him want to disappear. Still, he'd do it. For Amelia and Charlotte, he'd do anything. The press conference was scheduled for Monday morning. Harrison spent the weekend preparing with a media consultant, crafting a statement that was honest without being exploitative, that condemned Vanessa without turning his daughter's pain into a spectacle. Sunday night, as he was reviewing his notes one final time, his phone rang. Unknown number. His heart rate spiked, but he answered anyway, putting the call on speaker and gesturing for the police officer stationed in his study to start tracing it. Hello, Harrison. Vanessa's voice was eerily calm, almost cheerful. How are my beautiful stepdaughters? They're not your anything, Harrison said, fighting to keep his voice steady. Where are you, Vanessa? Somewhere you'll never find me. Did you really think I'd stick around Boston waiting to be arrested? Please. Kyle and I have been planning our exit strategy since the day I married you. She laughed, the sound sending ice down Harrison's spine. You were so easy, Harrison. So desperate for someone to love you, to help you raise those brats. You never questioned anything. Why are you calling? To let you know this isn't over. You think you've won because you've got the police and the lawyers on your side? You've won nothing. Those girls will never feel safe again. Every shadow, every unexpected sound, they'll wonder if it's me. I've already stolen their peace of mind. That's something no court can give back. The officer was frantically gesturing. They needed more time to complete the trace. You're wrong, Harrison said, forcing himself to keep her talking. My daughters are strong. They're healing. And they have something you'll never understand. They have real love. Real family. They'll recover from you like they recovered from losing their mother. You're just another bad memory that will fade with time. We'll see, Vanessa said softly. I left something for them, by the way. A parting gift. Check your mailbox, Harrison. And sweet dreams. The call disconnected. The officer shook his head. Not enough time for a complete trace, but they'd narrowed it to somewhere in the Caribbean. Harrison raced downstairs, the officer and Martha close behind. The mailbox at the end of his driveway contained a single manila envelope with no return address. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Photos of his daughters at school, at the park, at their favorite ice cream shop. Photos documenting every moment of their lives over the past 6 months, proving that Vanessa had been watching, cataloging, stalking them even before the incident at the dump. And underneath the photos was a note in Vanessa's handwriting. I know everything about them, Harrison. Every friend, every teacher, every place they love. You can't protect them from me. I'll always be watching, always waiting. And one day, when you least expect it, I'll finish what I started. Harrison sank to his knees on his driveway, the photos scattered around him like evidence of his failure. He'd thought he could protect his daughters by increasing security, by hiring bodyguards and installing cameras. But how did you protect children from a threat that could be anywhere, anyone, anytime? Mr. Blackwell, the officer said gently, we need to get you inside, and we need to collect this evidence. Harrison allowed himself to be led back to the house, but his mind was elsewhere. Vanessa was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And Harrison was beginning to understand that legal battles and criminal charges might not be enough to truly stop her. Sometimes justice required more than just courts and police. Sometimes it required fighting fire with fire. And Harrison Blackwell was about to learn just how far a father would go to protect his children. The press conference Monday morning was a media feeding frenzy. Harrison stood behind a podium in the conference room of his lawyer's office, camera flashes creating a strobe effect that made his head pound. But he kept his expression calm, professional, as he read his prepared statement. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my wife, Vanessa Blackwell, real name Vanessa Kowalski, had taken my 6-year-old daughters to an industrial dump site with the intention of forcing them to dig through garbage as punishment. This was not an isolated incident, but part of a sustained pattern of emotional abuse that I failed to recognize. His voice caught slightly. As a father, that failure will haunt me for the rest of my life. The room erupted with shouted questions, but Harrison raised his hand for silence. Vanessa is currently wanted on multiple charges including child endangerment, fraud, and bigamy. She's fled the jurisdiction with her actual husband, a convicted con artist named Kyle Rodriguez. They've made threats against my family, and I'm offering a $250,000 reward for information leading to their arrest and prosecution. More shouting, more questions. Harrison pointed to a reporter in the front row. Mr. Blackwell, how are your daughters coping with this trauma? They're incredibly brave. They're working with an excellent therapist, and every day they get a little stronger, but they'll be recovering from this for years. Do you blame yourself for not seeing the abuse earlier? Harrison's jaw tightened. Yes, absolutely. I trusted someone who didn't deserve that trust, and my children paid the price. But I'm committed to making sure they get the help they need, and that Vanessa faces full accountability for her actions. What would you say to Vanessa if she's watching this? Harrison looked directly into the camera. That you can run, but you can't hide forever. And when we find you, and we will find you, you'll answer for every tear my daughters cried. Every night they went to bed hungry because you locked them in their room. Every moment of fear you caused them. Justice is coming, Vanessa. Count on it. After the conference, Thomas pulled Harrison aside. That was good. Powerful. The reward announcement was smart. It'll generate tips, and even if most are useless, all it takes is one legitimate lead. I'm not just sitting around waiting for tips, Harrison said quietly. I've hired someone who specializes in finding people who don't want to be found. Thomas's expression grew wary. Harrison, be careful. Whatever you're planning, I'm not planning anything illegal, but I'm also not relying solely on the police. They're doing their job, but they have rules, protocols, jurisdictional limitations. The person I hired doesn't. The person Harrison had hired was a woman named Sarah Mitchell, a former FBI agent turned private investigator with a specialty in tracking fugitives internationally. She'd come highly recommended by a business associate who'd used her services to recover his kidnapped daughter from Mexico. Sarah was expensive, discreet, and apparently very good at her job. They met that afternoon in Harrison's office. Sarah was in her early 40s, with short dark hair and the watchful eyes of someone who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer and hadn't flinched. I've reviewed everything Detective Chen provided, Sarah said, spreading documents across Harrison's desk. Vanessa and Rodriguez are in St. Lucia. They flew into Huanora International Airport 4 days ago using fake passports. Good ones, probably cost them $15,000 each. How did you find them so fast when the police couldn't? The police are bound by international law, diplomatic protocols, extradition treaties. I'm not. Sarah pulled up photos on her tablet. They're staying at a resort called Paradise Cove under the names Michael and Julia Stevens, paid cash for a 2-week stay. Harrison stared at the photos. Grainy surveillance images showing Vanessa and Rodriguez lounging by a pool, drinking cocktails, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. While his daughters were in therapy, while he was holding press conferences and fielding death threats from Vanessa, she was on vacation. Can we get them arrested there? St. Lucia doesn't have an extradition treaty with the U.S. for these charges. We'd need to go through diplomatic channels, which takes months if it happens at all. Sarah leaned forward. But there are other options. What kind of options? The legal kind, just creative. Rodriguez has an outstanding warrant in Florida for violating his parole. He was supposed to stay in state for 3 years after his release, but he left after 18 months. If Florida authorities request his extradition, St. Lucia will honor that. It's a different category of crime. And once he's in custody on the parole violation, you can file to extradite him to Massachusetts on the fraud charges. It's a longer route, but it works. Sarah paused. As for Vanessa, she's trickier. But I have contacts in St. Lucia, people who can make her stay there very uncomfortable until she makes a mistake. Harrison considered this. It wasn't immediate justice, but it was movement. Progress. Do it. Whatever it costs. There's something else you should know. Sarah pulled out another document. I've been digging into Vanessa's background. She and Rodriguez have been running this scam for 8 years, but Vanessa's been in the con game a lot longer. She's 32, not 25 like she told you. 32? Harrison's mind reeled. Another lie in a mountain of lies. She started as a teenager, running small-time cons in Pennsylvania, shoplifting, credit card fraud, graduated to romance scams when she was 20. She's been arrested 4 times under 3 different names, but always managed to avoid serious prison time, usually by cooperating against her partners. Sarah's expression was grim. Harrison, Vanessa is a career criminal. What she did to your daughters wasn't personal. To her, it was just part of the job, removing obstacles that stood between her and your money. Harrison felt sick. He'd brought this person into his home, into his daughters' lives, because he was lonely and she was beautiful and charming. He'd been a mark, nothing more. Get them back here, he said quietly. Whatever it takes, get them both back here to face charges. Over the following week, Sarah worked her magic. The Florida authorities, prompted by an anonymous tip about Rodriguez's whereabouts, requested extradition. St. Lucian police arrested Rodriguez at his resort. And while Vanessa couldn't be extradited, Sarah's contacts made sure her fake passport was flagged. Her credit card stopped working, and suddenly, every hotel on the island was mysteriously fully booked. Within 3 days, Vanessa was sleeping in her rental car, desperate and running out of options. She'll bolt, Sarah predicted. She'll try to get to another island, somewhere without extradition, but every airport, every port in the Caribbean is now on alert. She's trapped. Harrison allowed himself a grim smile. The hunter had become the hunted. Meanwhile, life at home had settled into a cautious rhythm. The girls were back in school full-time, though they still had their security detail. Dr. Walsh's therapy sessions were helping, slowly but noticeably. Charlotte's nightmares were decreasing. Amelia had started smiling again. They were healing. But Harrison noticed other changes too. Amelia had become fiercely protective of her sister, almost aggressive with any adult who approached them. Charlotte had developed separation anxiety, crying when Harrison left for work, even though Martha and the security team were there. These were battle scars that might never fully fade. On Thursday evening, Detective Chen called with news. Rodriguez is in custody in Miami. Florida's holding him for the parole violation, and I've filed for his extradition to Massachusetts. We should have him here within 2 weeks. What about Vanessa? Still at large in St. Lucia, but her options are narrowing. Every flight she tries to book gets flagged. Every car she tries to rent gets mysteriously unavailable. Sarah Mitchell is doing excellent work. She's going to get desperate, Harrison said, and desperate people are dangerous. Which is why we're maintaining security at your home and the girls' school. Harrison, Vanessa can't hurt them. She's thousands of miles away with no way to get back to the U.S. without being arrested. But Harrison knew better than to underestimate Vanessa. She'd proven herself capable of planning, manipulating, and executing complex schemes. Desperation would only make her more dangerous. On Friday morning, an incident at school confirmed his fears, though not in the way he'd expected. Charlotte's teacher, Mrs. Peterson, called Harrison directly at 10 a.m., her voice tight with concern. Mr. Blackwell, I think you should come to the school. Nothing's happened to the girls, they're fine, but there's been a situation. Harrison's blood ran cold. What kind of situation? A woman tried to gain access to the building this morning. She claimed to be a substitute teacher, had what looked like proper credentials, but our new security protocols flagged something off about her ID. When we asked her to wait while we verified, she fled. Did you get a description? Blonde woman, late 20s, wearing a red dress. Our security cameras caught her face. Mrs. Peterson paused. Mr. Blackwell, the police are here reviewing the footage. They think it might have been someone working for your wife. Harrison was in his car before she finished speaking. Keep the girls inside, don't let them leave your sight. I'll be there in 10 minutes. At the school, Detective Chen was already reviewing security footage with the principal and campus security. When Harrison arrived, she pulled him aside. It wasn't Vanessa, Chen said immediately. The woman in the footage is younger, different build. But Harrison, look at this. She showed him a still image from the security camera. The woman bore a striking resemblance to Vanessa. Same hair color, similar facial structure, even the red dress. But upon closer inspection, the differences were clear. We ran facial recognition. Her name is Monica Shields, age 26, from Philadelphia. And get this, she has a prior connection to Kyle Rodriguez. They dated 3 years ago before he met Vanessa. Harrison's stomach turned. Vanessa sent her. That's our theory. Monica Shields flew into Boston yesterday from Miami. We're pulling her phone records now, but I'd bet money we'll find communication with Vanessa or Rodriguez. She's a pawn. Probably promised money to carry out surveillance or intimidation. So Vanessa's using proxies now, people she can manipulate into doing her dirty work while she's trapped in St. Lucia. Harrison felt rage building in his chest. How do we stop this? We've issued an arrest warrant for Shields on attempted identity fraud and conspiracy. Every law enforcement agency in the state has her photo. She won't get far. Chen's expression softened. Harrison, this actually helps us. Every person Vanessa tries to recruit, every scheme she attempts adds to her charges. She's digging herself deeper. But Harrison took no comfort in that. Vanessa had proven she could reach into Boston, could find people willing to threaten his daughters, even from thousands of miles away. The distance meant nothing if she had a network. That evening, after extra security checks and reassurances that the girls were safe, Harrison received a call from Sarah Mitchell. I need you to listen carefully, Sarah said without preamble. Vanessa made a mistake. She used a phone that wasn't properly secured to contact Monica Shields. We traced the call and pinpointed her location, not just St. Lucia, but a specific villa on the north coast of the island. Harrison sat forward. Can we use this? Better. The villa she's squatting in belongs to a British national who reported it as a break-in. St. Lucian police are en route now. She's about to be arrested for trespassing and breaking and entering, charges that don't require extradition treaties. And once she's in custody, once she's charged locally, we can work with the U.S. Embassy to add our warrants to her detention. It's not perfect, but it gets her off the streets and into a cell. Sarah paused. Harrison, she'll fight this. She'll hire lawyers, claim asylum, drag it out for months, but she'll be contained. She won't be able to hurt your family. Do it, Harrison said. Whatever it takes. 2 hours later, Detective Chen called with confirmation. Vanessa Kowalski was arrested by St. Lucian police at 1900 hours local time. She's currently being held at the Castries police station, pending charges of breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, and immigration violations. The U.S. State Department has been notified, and we're filing for her transfer to U.S. custody. Harrison exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. How long will the transfer take? Could be anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months depending on legal proceedings in St. Lucia. But Harrison, she's contained. She can't reach your daughters from a jail cell. That night, Harrison gathered Amelia and Charlotte in the living room. They deserved to know that the nightmare was closer to ending. Girls, I have good news, he began gently. The police arrested Vanessa. She's in jail very far away and she's going to stay there. Charlotte's eyes widened. Forever? For a very long time. And when she does get out eventually, you'll both be grown up and there will be laws that keep her far away from you. Amelia studied his face carefully. But you're still worried, Daddy. I can tell. Harrison marveled at his daughter's perceptiveness. I'm always going to worry a little bit. That's what parents do. But I'm not scared anymore. Vanessa can't hurt you. The bad guys lost and we won. We're safe now? Charlotte asked hopefully. You're safe now, Harrison confirmed, pulling both girls into a hug. You're safe and you're loved and everything is going to be okay. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Harrison stood at his bedroom window looking out over the Boston skyline. Vanessa was in custody. Rodriguez would be extradited within days. Monica Shields had been arrested trying to board a flight to Chicago. The network was collapsing, the threat neutralized. But Harrison knew the real battle was just beginning. The legal battle that would determine how much time Vanessa and her accomplices would serve, whether justice would truly be done. He thought about Jennifer, his first wife, and wished she could see how strong their daughters had become. Wished she could see how fiercely he'd fought for them. "We're going to be okay, Jen," he whispered to the night. "All of us. We're going to be okay." And for the first time in months, Harrison actually believed it. The call came at 2:30 in the morning, jolting Harrison from a restless sleep in the chair outside his daughter's room. Sarah Mitchell's voice was calm, professional, utterly devoid of emotion. "Rodriguez has been extradited to Massachusetts. He arrived at Boston Logan 3 hours ago and is currently being processed at the Federal Detention Center. He's already asking for a deal." Harrison's heart pounded. What kind of deal? He wants reduced charges in exchange for full testimony against Vanessa. He's willing to detail every aspect of their operation, how they met, how they planned the cons, everything. Sarah paused. "The DA's office is seriously considering it. Rodriguez's testimony would make the case against Vanessa absolutely airtight." "Do it," Harrison said without hesitation. "I want her buried under so much evidence she can't breathe. There's more. Vanessa's extradition hearing in St. Lucia is scheduled for next week. The charges there are minor, but combined with our warrants, she'll be transferred to U.S. custody within the month. Harrison, this is really happening. She's coming back to face justice." After the call ended, Harrison sat in the darkness of the hallway listening to Amelia and Charlotte's peaceful breathing through the baby monitor. For the first time in weeks, he felt something that might have been hope. When he broke the news to Detective Chen later that morning, she was cautiously optimistic. "Rodriguez is singing like a canary," Chen confirmed. "He's given us details about 6 previous victims, shown us how they laundered money, even provided evidence that Vanessa was the mastermind. According to him, she planned everything while he just followed orders." "Do you believe that?" Chen snorted. "Not for a second. They're both guilty as hell. But if his testimony helps us lock Vanessa away for decades, I don't care what story he tells himself." Over the following 3 weeks, the case against Vanessa built into something overwhelming. Rodriguez's testimony was damning. Financial records showed systematic theft over 2 years. The photos Vanessa had mailed, documenting her stalking of the girls, proved premeditation and malicious intent. And testimony from Diane Foster, Martha, Dr. Walsh, and even the girls' teachers painted a picture of calculated cruelty. When Vanessa finally arrived in Boston, escorted by U.S. Marshals and facing a phalanx of cameras, she looked nothing like the beautiful, confident woman who'd swept into Harrison's life 2 years ago. Her hair was dull, her face haggard, her orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. For a moment, as she was led into the courthouse, her eyes met Harrison's through the crowd. He saw no remorse there, only rage. The arraignment was quick. Vanessa pleaded not guilty to all charges: child endangerment, identity fraud, bigamy, conspiracy to commit fraud, making terroristic threats, and stalking. Her public defender argued for reasonable bail, citing her lack of violent criminal history. The judge wasn't buying it. "Ms. Kowalski, you fled the jurisdiction, attempted to use proxies to intimidate witnesses, and made explicit threats against minor children. You are a flight risk and a danger to the community. Bail is denied. Trial is set for 60 days from today." As Vanessa was led away, she screamed at Harrison, "This isn't over. You'll pay for this. Those brats will—" The bailiffs cut her off, physically restraining her as they forced her from the courtroom. Harrison felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The trial began 8 weeks later in late January. Harrison had debated whether to attend, whether subjecting himself and his daughters to the media circus was worth it, but ultimately, he decided they needed to see this through. Not in the courtroom itself, he'd never put his children through that, but nearby in a private waiting room where they could feel close to the proceedings without being traumatized by them. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented the photos of Amelia and Charlotte at the dump, crying and scared. They played the recording of Vanessa's threatening phone calls. They showed the fake identities, the stolen money, the evidence of Rodriguez's criminal history. And they called witness after witness who testified to Vanessa's pattern of manipulation and deceit. Martha took the stand, her hands shaking as she described overhearing Vanessa's plans, making the difficult decision to betray her employer's trust to protect the children. "I've worked for the Blackwell family for 12 years," she said through tears. "Those girls are like my own granddaughters. When I heard what Mrs. Blackwell was planning, I knew I had to act. I couldn't let those babies be hurt." Dr. Walsh testified about the psychological damage inflicted on the girls, the nightmares, the anxiety, the fear of abandonment. The trauma these children experienced will affect them for years, possibly for life. They were systematically terrorized by someone who was supposed to protect them. When Rodriguez took the stand, he was brutally honest about their operation. Yes, they'd targeted Harrison specifically because he was wealthy and vulnerable after his wife's death. Yes, Vanessa had been a willing participant from the beginning. In fact, she'd been the one to identify Harrison as a mark. Yes, they'd planned to steal millions and disappear. And yes, Vanessa had taken the girls to the dump as punishment because they'd gotten in the way of her plans. "Weren't you concerned about the children?" the prosecutor asked. Rodriguez shrugged. "Vanessa said they were spoiled brats who needed to learn humility. She said a little scare would do them good. I didn't think she'd actually make them dig through trash, but when I heard about it later, I wasn't surprised. Vanessa could be cruel when people disappointed her." The courtroom erupted. The judge had to call for order, and Harrison, watching from the gallery, felt a cold satisfaction. This was what justice looked like. The truth, laid bare for everyone to see. Vanessa's defense attorney tried to paint her as a victim, a woman manipulated by Rodriguez, coerced into participating in crimes she didn't fully understand. They brought in a psychologist who testified about battered woman syndrome, claiming Vanessa had been emotionally controlled by her husband. But the prosecution destroyed that narrative with evidence of Vanessa's prior arrests, her history of scams, and testimony from Rodriguez that she'd been the dominant partner in their relationship. The jury looked skeptical, then openly hostile. Vanessa never took the stand. Her lawyer advised against it, knowing she'd be eviscerated on cross-examination. Instead, they rested their case and hoped the jury would somehow find reasonable doubt. They didn't. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with guilty verdicts on all counts: child endangerment, identity fraud, bigamy, conspiracy to commit fraud, making terroristic threats, and stalking. The judge scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. When sentencing day arrived, Harrison was allowed to make a victim impact statement. He'd prepared remarks, practiced them with Thomas, but when he stood before the judge with his daughter's pictures in his hand, the prepared words fled. "Your Honor," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "7 months ago, I thought I knew what evil looked like. I thought I understood cruelty. But Vanessa Kowalski taught me that the worst monsters are often the ones we invite into our homes, the ones who smile while they plot to destroy everything we love." He held up the pictures. "These are my daughters, Amelia and Charlotte. They're 6 years old. They love butterflies and ice cream and bedtime stories. They're smart and kind and brave, and because of Vanessa, they're also afraid. They're afraid that someone will hurt them again. They're afraid that the people who are supposed to protect them will fail. They wake up from nightmares screaming for their mother, a mother who died 4 years ago when they were only 2 years old." Harrison's voice broke. "Vanessa didn't just try to steal my money. She tried to steal my daughter's childhood, their innocence, their ability to trust. And for that, Your Honor, I'm asking you to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law, not for revenge, but for justice. Because children like Amelia and Charlotte deserve to grow up knowing that when someone hurts them, there are consequences, real consequences." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd seen countless cases of child abuse, looked at Vanessa with undisguised contempt. "Ms. Kowalski, you are perhaps one of the most calculating and callous defendants I've encountered in 30 years on the bench. You targeted a grieving widower, manipulated your way into his family, and systematically abused 2 innocent children for financial gain. Your actions were premeditated, sustained, and utterly without remorse." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I hereby sentence you to 12 years in state prison on the child endangerment charges, to run consecutively with 8 years for the fraud charges. 20 years total with no possibility of parole for the first 10 years. Additionally, upon your release, you will be subject to a permanent restraining order prohibiting any contact with Harrison Blackwell or his daughters." Do you understand? Vanessa's face had gone ashen. Your Honor, please, 20 years, I'll be 45 when I get out. You're fortunate I don't have the authority to sentence you to more, the judge replied coldly. Bailiff, remove the defendant. As Vanessa was led away, screaming about appeals and cruel and unusual punishment, Harrison felt something release in his chest. It was over. Truly, finally over. Outside the courthouse, he faced a wall of reporters. This time, he'd prepared a brief statement. Justice has been served. My daughters and I can finally begin to heal. We're grateful to Detective Chen, the district attorney's office, and everyone who worked tirelessly to bring Vanessa Kowalski to justice. Now we ask for privacy as we move forward with our lives. No questions, no elaboration. He owed the public nothing more. That evening, Harrison gathered Amelia and Charlotte in the family room. It was time for a conversation they'd been putting off for months. Girls, I need to tell you something important. Vanessa has been sent to prison for a very long time. She won't be able to bother us anymore. How long? Charlotte asked. 20 years. By the time she gets out, you'll both be grown women with your own lives. You'll be 26 years old. Amelia considered this seriously. That's older than Vanessa was when she married you. Harrison blinked, surprised by his daughter's mathematical accuracy. Yes, exactly. Good, Charlotte said firmly. She deserves to be in jail. Daddy, why was Vanessa so mean to us? Amelia asked, the question Harrison had been dreading. Some people are broken inside, he finally said. They don't feel things the way we do, love, compassion, kindness. Vanessa was broken like that. It had nothing to do with you. You didn't cause it, and you couldn't have fixed it. Dr. Walsh has explained this, right? Both girls nodded. The important thing to remember is that what happened wasn't your fault, and it's over now. Vanessa can't hurt you anymore. Charlotte climbed into Harrison's lap. Are you going to marry someone else someday? Harrison stroked her hair, considering his answer carefully. Maybe someday. A long time from now. But right now, I just want to focus on you two and making sure you're happy and healthy. Is that okay? That's perfect, both girls agreed simultaneously, then giggled at the jinx. Over the following months, life slowly returned to something approaching normal. The media attention faded as other stories captured public interest. The girls' therapy sessions became less frequent as their symptoms improved. Amelia's fierce protectiveness mellowed into normal sisterly care. Charlotte's separation anxiety decreased to age-appropriate levels. They were laughing more, sleeping better, acting like children again. Harrison had made changes too. He'd promoted from within to replace Diane, choosing someone he'd worked with for a decade and trusted implicitly. He'd reduced his travel schedule dramatically to be home every night for dinner. And most importantly, he'd started trusting his instincts about people again. 2 years after Vanessa's sentencing, Harrison received an unexpected letter. It was from Vanessa herself, sent from the women's correctional facility where she was serving her time. Dear Harrison, it began, I know you hate me, and you have every right to. What I did was unforgivable. I can't even explain it to myself, let alone to you. Kyle and I were caught up in the con, in the thrill of it, and we lost sight of the fact that we were hurting real people, real children. I've been attending therapy in prison, working to understand why I am the way I am. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Harrison read the letter once, then filed it away without responding. Maybe Vanessa was genuinely remorseful. Maybe she'd changed, but it didn't matter. The girls were healing, thriving, and they didn't need her remorse or her attempts at redemption. On a warm Saturday afternoon in May, 2 years and 3 months after the trial, Harrison took the girls to visit their mother's grave. They were now 8 years old, taller and more confident than the frightened 6-year-olds who'd stood in that dump. Mom, guess what? Amelia said to the headstone, placing fresh flowers, pink roses, Jennifer's favorite. I got first place in the science fair. My project was about butterfly migration. And I'm on the soccer team, Charlotte added. We won the championship last week. Harrison smiled, listening to his daughters chat with their mother's memory. They remembered Jennifer now mostly through stories and photos, but they carried her with them in their kindness, their strength, their resilience. You'd be so proud of them, Jen, Harrison whispered. They survived everything. We all did. As they walked back to the car, Charlotte took Harrison's hand. Daddy, I was thinking. We should get a dog, a big one that can protect us and also be cuddly. That's actually a great idea, Harrison agreed. What do you think, Amelia? Yes, can we get a golden retriever? They're the best. Golden retriever it is, Harrison laughed. And just like that, they were planning for the future again. Not looking over their shoulders, not living in fear, but moving forward with joy and hope. Vanessa had tried to destroy their family, but she'd failed. They'd survived, healed, and emerged stronger. That evening, as Harrison tucked both girls into bed, they'd finally moved to separate rooms 6 months ago, a sign of their growing independence and security. Amelia asked one final question. Daddy, do you think we'll ever stop thinking about what happened with Vanessa? Harrison considered this carefully. I think the memories will always be there, but they'll become smaller, less important, like a scar that fades over time. You'll remember it happened, but it won't hurt anymore. And eventually, when you're older, you'll realize that surviving something difficult made you stronger and more compassionate. I already feel stronger, Amelia said thoughtfully. Like I can handle hard things now because I've already handled the hardest thing. Harrison's throat tightened. His 8-year-old daughter had just articulated something most adults never learned. That's exactly right, sweetheart. You're both incredibly strong, and I'm so proud of you. We're proud of you too, Daddy, Charlotte said sleepily. You saved us. We saved each other, Harrison corrected gently. That's what families do. He kissed both girls goodnight and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them drift off to sleep. In the soft glow of their nightlights, they looked peaceful, safe, loved. 2 years ago, he'd knelt in a driveway surrounded by photographs documenting his failure to protect them. Tonight, he stood in their doorway watching them sleep without nightmares, planning for golden retrievers and science fairs and soccer championships. This was justice, not just the courtroom kind, but the kind that mattered most. His daughters were safe. They were happy. They were home. And Harrison Blackwell, who'd once felt like the biggest failure as a father, now understood that he'd given his girls the most important gift possible, the knowledge that they were loved, protected, and worth fighting for. Vanessa had lost. Love had won. And that was the only ending that mattered.